Hey guys, it's Destiny, and today I'll be discussing Seele, whatever you guys want to call her, as she is our first 5-star on the limited banner. And without further ado, let's get straight into it. To begin, I'd like to discuss Seele's kit. Seele is a quantum element character, part of the Path of the Hunt, and her goal is to inflict large amounts of single target damage on enemies as fast as possible. Her skill and her ultimate allow her to buff herself and do high damage to enemies. Seele's skill does a high amount of damage to enemies and buffs her speed for multiple turns, and her ultimate, Butterfly Fury, allows her to enter a buff state and deal a high percentage of Seele's quantum damage to an enemy. You may be wondering though, what is Seele's buff state? Seele's buff state is from her talent Resurgence. Resurgence is one of the most important things in Seele's kit, as it allows her to have her buff state upon defeating an enemy and allows her to take another action immediately after she defeats an enemy. Her buff state can be triggered by Resurgence or her ultimate, and allows her to increase her own damage for that turn. Being able to have another turn after defeating an enemy from Resurgence is incredibly powerful, as Seele will be able to wipe out foes quickly and be a powerhouse on your team. As for her traces, she's able to reduce attention on herself if her HP is below a certain percentage, which should be roughly 50% or lower, which allows her to safely attack enemies and stay on the field longer. Another one of her traces allows her to advance her action forward by percentage after using her basic attack, which could be useful in the case of using her basic attacks at times rather than her skill, to manage your skill point usage with her, as she is a skill point hungry character. As for her final trace, her quantum penalty increases, which element resistance is essentially the resistance enemies have towards elements. And if they are not weak to an element, then they'll have a resistance to it. Her trace allows her to do more damage since she's increasing towards those resistances with the penalty. Overall though, Seele has an incredible base kit at E0 alone and can be an incredibly powerful single target DPS to have on your team. Now let's get into her Eidolons. For Seele's first Eidolon, she will be dealing damage to an enemy whose HP percent is 80% or lower, and her crit rate will increase by 15%. This Eidolon is really good for being able to just increase your crit rate against those enemies and just basically ensure that you may be able to get that KO, or you're just really close to basically just getting that hit if you do not OHKO an enemy in the first try. So I think this Eidolon is really good just for that benefit alone. Now for her second Eidolon, the speed boost effect of Seele's skill can stack up to 2 times. This, in my opinion, is probably her best Eidolon due to the fact that if you have the speed boost effect stacked twice, now you can invest less speed into your relic substats due to the fact that she'll be able to gain so much speed just on her own. So I think this is really good for that purpose, by far her best Eidolon, and if you were to go for Eidolons, I do recommend this one. Her fourth Eidolon allows her to regenerate energy after defeating an enemy, which could be useful for building up her ultimate faster and being able to take advantage of her ultimate's damage and her ultimate resetting her own turn quicker in order to possibly trigger Resurgence again. Her sixth Eidolon makes foes who are suffering from her ultimate take additional quantum damage each time they are attacked by a percentage of her ultimate damage. This Eidolon can be incredibly useful by doing far more damage against enemies and also being able to clear fights even faster. As for her Eidolons, any of them can be useful for increasing Seele's overall power, but I think her base kit alone is powerful enough, so I wouldn't stress about getting her Eidolons on her unless you want that additional damage and those quality of life improvements that her E1, her E6, and so on can give her. Now let's get into Seele's relics. Seele has a few relics she can take advantage of. You can use the 4-piece Musketeer set as a beginner set since it increases her attack, basic attack damage, and speed. Personally, for her best relic set, I'd recommend Genius of the Brilliant Stars, as it increases her quantum damage, and when she attacks enemies with a quantum weakness, she ignores a percentage of their defense. This set is very good for increasing Seele's damage against enemies, and especially enemies that are weak to quantum. As for the Planetary Ornament set, there are a lot of 2-piece sets that you can use in combination with the Musketeer set or the Genius of Brilliant Stars set. These are the 4 sets I recommend. The Celestial set is great for increasing her crit rate, and once her crit rate is above a certain percentage, she'll be able to increase her basic and skill damage. This set is great if you're able to get a lot of crit on Seele through your relic main and substats. As for the next set, the Insert set is very similar to the Celestial set, as it increases crit rate and increases ultimate and follow-up damage instead. This set will be really good if your Seele has high amounts of crit, and the next sets have speed requirements rather than crit requirements for your secondary effects. The Space Sailing Station set is able to increase the wearer's attack by 12%, which that can change when the game is out. They may change that percentage, but when the wearer's speed reaches 120 or higher, the wearer's attack increases once again. Seele has naturally high speeds and can easily reach 120 or above through her skill's speed buff alone, so she'll always be able to have both attack buffs from that ornament set. The last ornament set I recommend is the Talia set, which can increase the wearer's break effect, and the speed is above a certain threshold, then they'll be able to increase that break effect further. This set can be really good if you want to have a break build on Seele, which can allow her to do more damage when she breaks enemies' weakness meters. Since Seele is a fast character who can attack multiple times in a turn, you could try to ensure that she breaks enemies' weakness meters and do a lot of damage to the enemy as a result. As for Relic substats, I primarily recommend attack, crit, break effect, and speed, and possibly even some energy recharge if you do want to gather her ultimate quicker, but I'd recommend the 4 other stats before energy recharge. As you can see, Seele has quite a few options when it comes to how to set up her relics. Just for a quick reminder, if you do not know how relics work, the 4-piece sets go outside of the relic sets, and then the planetary ornaments are the 2-piece sets, so in total you'd be farming for 6 relics on your characters. Now let's get into Lightcones. Seele has a few Lightcones that you can use to increase her DPS capabilities further. I recommend In the Night, Cruising in the Stellar Sea, Only Silence Remains, and Return to the Darkness. For the 4-star options, Only Silence Remains is able to increase attack, and if there's 2 or less enemies on the field, crit rate is also increased. This Lightcone can be good for increasing Seele's attack and also increasing her crit rate when there are not many enemies on the field. She's able to quickly wipe out the little enemies on the field. The main boss being the only one on the field can be highly probable to take advantage of the increased crit rate requirement. The Return to Darkness Lightcone, which is also a 4-star Lightcone, is able to increase crit rate, and if the user hits an enemy with a critical hit, then there's a chance to dispel 1 buff on the enemy. This Lightcone can be good for an overall crit rate increase and the possibility to dispel buffs on the enemy. As for the free-to-play option, I recommend Cruising in the Stellar Sea, which is a 5-star Lightcone you can achieve through grinding in the game. Cruising in the Stellar Sea is a Lightcone that increases the wearer's crit rate and increases the crit rate against enemies with HP less than or equal to a certain percentage, which will be roughly 50% or less. When the wearer defeats an enemy, it'll increase that character's attack for numerous turns. This Lightcone offers ways to get a good amount of crit rate and also how much damage you'll do to the enemy overall, and is a great option for free to play. As for her best in slot, it would be her signature Lightcone, which is In the Night. In the Night is able to increase Seele's crit rate and increase basic attack, skill damage, and increase the crit damage for her ultimate by a percentage for every 10 speed over 100 speed, and it can stack 8 times. This Lightcone is perfect for Seele since you'll want high speed on her, and Seele naturally has a high speed base stat. When she uses her skill, she'll be able to increase her speed, and stacking speed on relics can be beneficial for max potential with this Lightcone. Overall, Seele has numerous Lightcones she could take advantage of, and all of them are excellent options for her. Lastly, let's discuss team comps. For team comps, you'll want to have a team that ideally revolves around Seele and supporting her, as she'll be the main DPS on the team. Great partners that come to mind are Pela, Bronya, Tingyun, Fire MC, Natasha, and more. Bronya and Tingyun are able to buff Seele by a considerable amount, and I'd recommend putting either of them on the team to support Seele's damage output. Pela can be used as a debuffer and a sub DPS who can greatly reduce the defense of enemies, which Seele can benefit from, as she'll be able to do more damage to enemies as a result. As for healers or shielders, the free-to-play option I'd recommend is Main Character or Natasha. Main Character is able to create shields on taunt enemies, while Natasha can heal Seele if her HP gets too low and the others on the team. One thing to consider when making a team for Seele is how skill hungry she is, which means you'll want allies who can regenerate skill points and are fine with normal attacking rather than using their skill each turn, as Seele is the one who will want to take advantage of using her skill most of the time to regenerate her ultimate faster and enter her buff state. Being able to have more speed from her skill and overall wipe enemies as fast as possible. Ultimately, it depends on which characters you have on your account, as numerous characters can work with Seele, but you'll have to be wary of how many skill points are being used in battle. As for my personal thoughts on Seele, I I believe she's definitely one of the strongest DPS characters out the gate in the game, and she'll be incredible for anyone to acquire on their account. I personally will be pulling for Seele as she is a powerful character and definitely one of my favorites in the game. That'll be all for my Seele guide, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm going to be releasing more Star Rail guides and more character guides in the upcoming days, and I'm actually working on a character guide playlist with Mihoyo, as he'll be covering some of the standard characters on his channel while I do some on mine. Make sure to subscribe for those upcoming Star Rail guides and let me know in the comments down below which 5-star you want the most in Honkai Star Rail. I hope you have a nice one. Peace.